Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Finally, we're going to have a Revelation teaching. The last one was done 3 months ago, November 2nd.
It's a revelation.
Let me tell you, between life happening and life getting in the way, 3 months went by real quick. And just quick note, we won't be here next weekend. We got family stuff to attend to, and then following weekend after that, might not be here either, depending on the weather. We haven't seen our son and family that live in Bozeman. We haven't seen him since Thanksgiving, and we've been trying to get down there ever since, and haven't been able to do it because of the weather or some other things. So anyway, here we are. We're in part 46, February 1st, 2025. And what we're going to do is we're going to finish up chapter 11, and then we move on into chapter 12, the book of Revelation. So Revelation chapter 11 and verse 18. Revelation 11, verse 18. We're going to spend quite a while on that verse. And the nations were angry, yet your anger has come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged. And you will give a reward to your servants, the prophets, and to the set apart ones, and to those who fear your name, the small with the great, and you will destroy those who destroyed the earth. But right off the bat, it says, and the nations were they weren't happy campers. The nations were angry. And be written in the Hebrew context, it would be, and the nations were angry on steroids. That's the best way to put it. So that's what we're going to kind of talk on today, because the last time we went down to verse 19, the last verse in the chapter, but I want to spend a lot more time on that verse for a number of reasons. And so first off, let's read that verse again. And the nations were angry, and your anger has come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged. And you will give a reward to your servants, the prophets, and to the set apart ones, and to those who fear your name, the small with the great. And you will destroy those who destroyed the earth. Two things, though, to keep in mind here is the nations were angry, and those who destroy the earth, they will be destroyed. So right now, let's go to Psalm chapter 2 and verse 1. Psalm chapter 2 and verse 1. Why are the nations in an uproar? And why do the people mutter in vain? Remember, the nations were angry. Okay. Let's go to Psalm 83 now, verse 1 to 8. Psalm 83, 1 to 8. In the Hebrew Bible, it'd be down to verse 9. So Psalm 83, this is a song of Asaph. O Elohim, keep not your silence, hold not your shalom, and be not still, O El. For behold, your enemies are in an uproar, and they that hate you have lifted up the head. They hold crafty converse against your people, and take counsel against your treasured ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more a remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent against they make a covenant. The tents of Edom, and the Ishmaelim, the Moab, the Hagrites, the Gebal, Gammon, Amalek, Pleshet with the inhabitants of Zor. Assyria also joined with them, and they have been an arm for the children of Lot. Selah. Selah. Okay, so let's go through that just a little bit. The tents of Edom, sons of Edom. Those are Arabs, and these Arabs are descended from Esau and Ishmael. And these include the Palestinian refugees in southern Jordan. In fact, these people today make up most of the populations of the nations that constitute the Middle East, except for Turkey, Iran, and Egypt. Basically, it's most of those who currently surround Israel. Next is the Edomites. The Edomites / Arabs. The Ishmaelites are basically from Saudi Arabia. Some are Bedouins and some are Kurds. And they are genetically mixed with those living in the nations surrounding Israel. The Kurds are concentrated in northern Iraq, eastern Turkey, and western Iran. Moab. Okay, those are the Palestinian refugees in southern Jordan. And today they've been inbred into most of the surrounding people groups. And remember, the bloodline comes from the incestuous union between Lot and his daughters. Okay, now we have the Hagrites. They're basically the Egyptians. But the Hagrites also lived in Saudi Arabia. Then we have the nation of Gabal. Those are the northern Lebanese in a nutshell. Then we have Ammon. The Ammonites are another group of people who came from the union of Lot and his daughters. They are also Palestinian refugees in northern Jordan. Ammon, as you well know, is the capital of Jordan, named after this ancient ancestor. Now, another one we have is the next one is the Moloch, or what people say Amalek. Amalek himself was one of Esau's progeny. Collectively, Amalek's descendants became known as the Amalekites. In fact, they were the ones who attacked the Israelites just after the Red Sea crossing. 4 centuries later, Saul, or Shaul, pronounced in Hebrew, the first coming of Israel, was instructed by Yahweh to destroy these people. So go to 1 Samuel 15. 1 Samuel 15, 1-3. First Samuel chapter 15, 1-3. And Shmuel said unto Shaul, Yahweh sent me to anoint you to be king over this people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken you unto the voice of the words of Yahweh. This is Yahweh's oath. I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he set himself against him in the way when he came up out of Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox, sheep, camel, and ass. So the question, why would they want to slaughter all the animals? Okay, I'll give you one simple biblical reason. Remember those pigs? And yeah, and Yeshua cast out the demons in this guy, and the demon went over and took up this whole herd of pigs. And where'd they go? Run off a cliff into the sea and drown. Okay, long story short, this spirit of Amalek is a very serious, deadly spirit against humans, especially the Jews or anyone associated with them. So these animals, remember, these demons don't like to live empty-handed. They want to live in a host. If they get kicked out of a human, they'll go find an animal or something to enter into and live. They don't want to live outside of a host. So these animals need, Anything that has to do with the Moloch needs to be utterly destroyed. And utterly means like if you dropped dropped a atomic bomb on something, it utterly destroys it. And that's that kind of destruction Yahweh talked about. Now, instead, because of Saul's disobedience, God's people were almost destroyed by Haman. Remember the book of Esther? Okay. The festival of Purim. He was in, Haman was an Amalekite who descended from one of those whom Saul allowed to survive. These people have inbred with other Arab groups living in the region today. Originally, the Amalekites lived in the Sinai Peninsula, which is immediately south of Israel. Now, in the Psalm 83, the next one we have has three different names. It's pronounced Zor, it's pronounced Tyre, and it's also Philistia. Okay, they're all right there together, one the same, except for Philistia. Now, the inhabitants of Tyre, including its sister city, Sidon, were known by the Greeks as Phoenicians, but known by the ancient Hebrews as the descendants of Canaan or Canaan. That's who the ancient Israelites knew them by. Remember that Canaan was the cursed son of Ham, who was the son of Noah. These people lived to the immediate north of Israel, known today as Lebanon. Now we come to Philishet or Philistia, or Palestinian, and Hamas of the Gaza Strip. That's who they are. Tyre also is where Hezbollah and the southern Lebanese are. This is all the scriptures, okay? Then we have Assyria. That includes Syria and northern Iraq. However, the nation 2,700 years ago was centered in the land that we know today as Iran. So certainly Psalm 83, verse 8, foretells that Assyria and Iran will play a supporting role in fighting against Israel. As we have already known, Iran has already joined or has supported Israel's enemies by supplying them with military materials and advisors. Okay? So now let's move on to chapter 12, Revelation 12, verse 1 and verse 2. Revelation 12, verse 1, and a great sign was seen in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars upon her head. And she was with child and crying and laboring in childbirth, also being in pain to bring forth. Okay, let's keep your finger there and go to Genesis 37, 5. Genesis chapter 37, verse 5. We'll read down to verse 10. And Yosef dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves came round about and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream and told it to his brothers and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bowed down to me. And he told to his father and to his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said unto him, what is this dream yet that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow down to you to the earth? Wow. Wow. Well, obviously, without going into a lot of detail, we know that this is a dream about Israel, right? Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that to prove it. Okay, now let's go back to verse 2, Revelation 12, verse 2. And she was with child and crying and laboring in childbirth, also being in pain to bring forth. Okay, let's go to Isaiah 66, verse 7. Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 7. Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 7. Yeshayahu, chapter 66, verse 7. Before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man child. Go to Isaiah 26, verse 17. Isaiah chapter 26 and verse 17.
26, verse 7.
Like as a woman with child that draws near the time of her delivery, is in pain and cries out in her pangs, so have we been at your presence, O Yahweh. So we see a lot of things where Israel, Jewish people, the Hebrews, a lot of pain from being born to born and grow up to become a nation. And the pain and suffering who suffered all these years until 2,000 years ago, and then become a nation again in 48. And then the pain came back. Okay? Now, go to Revelation 12, verse 3. And another sign was seen in heaven. Behold, there was a great dragon of fire that had 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 crowns upon his head. What's interesting is that the word dragon is mentioned 13 times in the book of Revelation. So we're seeing then that the false Messiah, being controlled by Satan himself, is a pretty powerful figure in the end of days. Let's look at the last half of verse 3. That had 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns upon its head. These are symbols of the 7 world empires that precede the kingdom of the false Messiah, which is the 8th kingdom. So the first kingdom, Egypt was the first kingdom to oppress Israel. Egypt was. The second kingdom to oppress Israel was Assyria. They were the second. The third kingdom to oppress Israel was Babylon. The fourth one was the Medo-Persia. The fifth one was Greece. Sixth one is Rome. Seventh one, I'm going to clarify some terms here because you've probably heard it. I've heard it for who knows how many years, decades. That's revived Roman Empire. No, it's not. It's the revised Roman Empire. So you need to not say revived Roman Empire, but the revised Roman Empire. Okay? It's revived Roman Empire. This kingdom will basically be made up of the 10 kingdoms inside the Roman Empire in the last days. Any doubt about it? Look at the United Nations.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So let's go to verse 4, Revelation 12, verse 4. And its tail drew away a third of the stars that were in heaven, cast them upon the earth. And the dragon was standing before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she gave birth, he could devour her son. So basically, a third of Yahweh's angels that rebelled with Lucifer, and showing how many will be with him in the future war in heaven under the seventh trumpet. Excuse me, let's read verses 7 through 12. Revelation 12, verse 7. And there was a war in heaven, and Michael and his angels were fighting with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. And they did not prevail, and no place was found for them in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, the head, that serpent was called Hasatan, who deceived. Deceived who? The whole earth. And he was cast out upon the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a great voice from heaven saying, Behold, there is deliverance and power in the kingdom of our Eloah. For the accuser of our brothers is cast out, who accused them night and day before Eloah. And they overcame him, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and through the word of his testimony. And they did not love their own nefashot, even unto death. Because of this, rejoice, O heavens, and those who dwell in them. Woe to the earth and to the sea, because the Akalkartza, who has great fury, has come down to them, while knowing that the time is short for him. Okay, let's go back to verse 4. And he drew, and his tail drew away a third of the stars that were in heaven, and cast them upon the earth. And the dragon was standing before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she gave birth, she could devour her son.
He could devour.
So standing before the woman, obviously, this is the dragon's first purpose. His first major purpose was to make sure there was not a leader of Israel to come, which is the Messiah. If Israel is devoid of a spiritual leader and its king, Israel has nothing, because the Messiah is reduced to nothing. So the dragon's first purpose is to destroy the man-child as soon as the man-child is born. Let's go to Matthew chapter 2, verse 13 and verse 16. Matthew 2:13. Matthew chapter 2, verse 13. Then after that, we'll go to verse 16. Matthew 2, verse 13. And after they had departed, and behold, the angel of Yahweh appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, take the boy and his mother, and flee you away into Egypt, and be there. And there you'll stay until I return to you. For Herod is seeking to put the boy to death. Verse 16. Then Herod, seeing that he was deceived by the Magi, was exceedingly furious, and sent forth and put to death all the boys that were in Bethlehem and in all the border thereof, from 2 years old and under, as he had heard the set time from the Magi. Okay, just to clear one thing up, and it's too bad they put it this way. 2 years old and older, we think as child was born, as his first birthday, then the second birthday is 2 years old, right? In Hebrew understanding, it's still this way today. No, it's not. This boy that Herod's going to kill is 1 year old or younger. The reason being is when a child born 8 days later, they consider that child to be 1 year old. So you add another year to that in our line of thinking, then that would be 2 years. But basically what he's saying here, the child's got to be less than 1 year old. Because that's how we would look at it in our time frame. Because when he's 8 days old or she's 8 days old, then that person is 1 year old.
Why?
That's just the way they do it. They do that with the animals too, when they're born. Heifer at 3 years old is actually in Hebrew thought it's 2 years old. A year old when they're born. Okay, so that's another story for another time. And so we have then the first major issue of Satan is to make sure Israel has no God.
Has no way.
Has no God. Remember, Satan will tempt Yeshua, say, hey, you do this, I'll give you everything you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Turn these loaves and rocks into bread. No. No, man does not live by stone alone. Oh, no, man does not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yahweh does a man live, right? Okay, so Satan fails, of course, because Yahweh takes a man-child to heaven. Let's look at let's look at verse 5 first. Revelation 12:5. And she gave birth to a male child and was about to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. And her son was caught up to Eloah and to his throne. Okay, now let's go, keep your finger there, go to Acts 1:9. Acts chapter 1, verse 9. Acts chapter 1, verse 9. And while he had said these things, while they watched him, he was taken up, and a cloud received him, then he was hidden from their eyes. So back to verse 5, Revelation 12, verse 5. And she gave birth to a male child who was about to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. It said right there, who was about to rule all the nations. So in other words, he was an adult. Go back to Acts chapter 1, what we just read, verse 9. And her son was caught up to Eloah and to his throne. Okay, this is not an overnight thing. This is a long planned out scheme by Satan to destroy Yeshua. Okay, now go to Isaiah 66, verse 7. Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 7. Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 7. Before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man child. Go to Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. Therefore Yahweh himself shall give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel. Now I'll go to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. Be 5 in the Hebrew Bible. Chapter 9, verse 6, verse 5 in Hebrew. For a child is born unto us, a son is given unto us, and the government is upon his shoulder, and his name is called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty El, the Everlasting Father, Sar Shalom, or the Prince of Peace. Now, I've given this handout before. I'm not going to do it, just going to briefly touch on it. The verse we just read in chapter 7 does not prove the virgin birth. It's absolutely impossible to prove the virgin birth from Isaiah 7. It says a sign will come forth. The sign does not show up until Isaiah chapter 9. And the sign comes up where it says in verse 7, chapter 9, verse 7, the government may be increased. Wow. There's a sign. In Hebrew, you have letters when they're at the end of a word, they're called a sophit. The letter mem is one of the letters at the end of a word. It's called, instead of a mem in the middle of the word, it's called a mem sophit, like the noon. If it's at the end, it's a noon sophit. But what's interesting is the word for increased is the marbe. In other words, like to or be, even in this case, but the word increased is marbe, and it begins with the mem and letter, mem sophit. See, the letter mem is a picture of a womb, but the mem sophit is like a square, shows that the womb is closed, that she knew no man and conceived. That is the sign it's talking about in Isaiah 7. That's the sign. So when we read something like that, we got to keep reading until we see the sign. And you're only going to see it in Hebrew. You're not going to see it in English or German or Japanese or Russian, whatever language you want to look at. It's only there in the Hebrew, the marbe. Okay, so that's, move on here. Now we need to address one of the most important topics in all the Bible. The main topic is Elohim, right? Okay, that's the main topic. So when we talked about the Torah portion a couple hours ago, what is the one thing that I said in the statement that I said we're going to talk about in the Revelation teaching? When you turn away from the Creator and His creation, you will end up turning against Yahweh and against His creation. You'll turn against it. Why the nations are roaring bitterly? Why are they so bitterly angry? He's the creator of the universe and the things that are in it. So again, when you turn away from the Creator, you turn away from His creation. When you do this, you turn against the Creator and against His creation by default, knowing or unknowingly. And when you do that, that opens up the whole demonic world to come in and influence you against the truth. Now, I didn't say possession. I said influence you and do everything it can to convince you that God is a liar, that your soul, body's worth more than your soul. Okay, those kind of things. So this is very dangerous. And there are so many avenues and directions that we should go. But for now, I want to focus on one thing, the Jews and Israel. The Jews and Israel. First off, from Jonathan Cahn's book, The Dragon's Prophecy. How many have got that book, have the book and read it? Okay. So I'm going to make a couple of quotes from the book. Quote, if evil is uncreated, how did it come to exist? God did not create evil, but He did create personhood, consciousness, and violation, free will. Free will is a necessity. If one does what is good because one has no choice in doing so, then it is not good. The good must be freely chosen and thus requires free will, and therein is the risk. To allow the choosing of good, one must allow the choosing of its opposite. And the opposite of good is evil. It is the allowance and risk of the good that allow for the risk of evil. unquote. Okay, we all know that Satan chose evil and is the father of lies. Look at John 8:44. John 8:44. John chapter 8, verse 44. You are from the father, Akalkatsa, and you want to do the lust of your father, who from the beginning killed men and did not stand in the truth because the truth was not in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from himself because he is a liar and even its father. So Satan is the father of lies. Therefore, Satan is the opposer of the creator and his creation. So he's against, he departed from Yahweh and he departed from Yahweh's creation. Therefore, he turned against Yahweh and turned against his creation, especially the Jewish people, state, or the country. Now look at Isaiah 14:14. Look at Isaiah 14:14. Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 14. Let's start in verse 13 first. And you said in your heart, I will send into heaven above the stars of El. I will exalt my throne, and I will sit upon the mount of meeting in the uttermost parts of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like Elyon. So that's what Satan wants to do. Because now, not only has he turned away from Yahweh and his creation, now he turned against him. Now he wants to be the creator and the God himself. Now, to the point from above, the Jews in Israel again, again from Johnson Kahn book, The Dragon Prophecy, quote, there is something about the Jews. There is now, and has always been, they have never quite, they never quite fit into the world. Even from the beginning, when they journeyed in the wilderness to the promised land, it was said of them in Numbers 23:9. Let's go to Numbers 23:9. Numbers chapter 23, verse 9. From the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him. Behold, it is a people that shall dwell alone and shall not be reckoned among the nations. None of the nations want him. Israel by themselves. No different than, especially when Sandy and I especially knew about the truth of the Torah of the Bible. Pretty soon, no one wants you. You're by yourself. Same thing, okay? Now, continue on. Quote, the Jewish people have always been a mystery to the world. No people have ever known so much rejection, antipathy, and hatred, joined to one land, as no other people have been ever sojourned to a land, and yet separated from their land and landless, as no other people have been so separated from land or landless, dwelling apart and separate from the nations, as no people have ever been separate, and yet so intertwined with the nations and critical to world history as no other people have been, so intertwined and critical. So no people have ever been so connected to their times and their space, and yet no people have so transcended the parameters of time and space and to become near timeless and universal. They have been the weakest of nations, yet the strongest, the most vulnerable of peoples, and most often in danger of extermination, and yet the most enduring of all peoples. No peoples while on earth have ever known the presence, so known the presence of God and the glories of heaven. And yet no other people have ever so known the depths of hell, and they are an enema, an anomaly, a paradox. They are a mystery people, unquote. See, the world can't figure us out because they have turned away from God and his creation. And therefore, because of doing that, their hatred of God and the hatred of his creation are expounding daily. All we got to do is look around us. Okay? Look at Zechariah. Well, what I put down here is I'm going to add one more thing to what John the Con just said. Go to Zechariah chapter 2, verse 7 and 8. Zechariah chapter 2, verse 7 and 8, 11 and 12 in Hebrew Bible. Zechariah chapter 2, verse 7 and 8. Maybe 11 and 12 in the Hebrew. Zechariah chapter 2, verse 7. Call Zion, escape, you that dwell with the daughters of Babel. For this is Yahweh Zebaoth, who sent me after the glory unto the nations, which spoiled you. Surely he that touches you touches the apple of his eye. Brethren, any nation that touches Israel is touching the apple of God's eye. So how do you like it? We've all been poked in the eye with something in our lifetime. But if someone come and poke their finger in your eye, how would that make you feel? Would not feel good, would it? That's what they're doing to Yahweh. They're taking their finger and pushing it into his eye. When they touch Israel, they're touching the apple of his eye. Not good, okay? So the Bible says Israel is the apple of his eye. Therefore, the nations and the individuals ought to be praying for Israel and not cursing Israel. They ought to put the blame on Hamas, not the blame on Israel. Look at Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. And we go through 8 to 10. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8 to 10. Devarim 32, verse 8. When Elion gave to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the children of man, he set the borders of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. For the portion of Yahweh is his people, Yaakov the lot of his inheritance. Let's read that again. For the portion of Yahweh is his people. Okay, keep that in context. He found him in a desert land and in the waste, a howling wilderness. He compassed him about. He cared for him, kept him as the apple of his eye. Apple of his eye. So, brethren, only the nation of Israel is the apple of Yahweh's eye, not the United States, not Great Britain, not Canada, not Mexico. No other nation has that title. As you can see, because Satan turned against Elohim and his creation, the whole world under the influence of Satan is turning against Israel, Elohim, and his creation. It's a simple deduction. When it's put it that way, it's very simple to see what is happening. When someone turns away, or a nation turns away from Yahweh and turns away from his creation, then result is not good. Okay, Revelation 12, verse 6. And the woman fled to the wilderness where she had a place that was prepared by Eloah, that they should nourish her for 1,260 days. Again, and the woman fled to the wilderness where she had a place that was prepared by Eloah, and they should nourish her. Who is they? And they should nourish her for 1,260 days. Let's go to Daniel 7:25. Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. And he shall speak words against Elyon, and shall wear out the saints of Elyon. And he shall think to change the seasons and the decrees, and they shall be given into his hand till the time and times to have. Go to Daniel 9:27. Daniel 9:27. And he shall make a firm covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and offering to cease. Upon the wing of detestable things shall be that which causes defilement, and that until extermination, wholly determined, be poured out upon that which has caused defilement. Daniel chapter 12 and verse 7. Daniel 12, verse 7. And I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, when he lifted up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swore by him that lives forever, that it shall be for a time, times and a half. And when they have made an end of breaking in pieces the power of the set apart people, all these things shall be finished. Okay, let's go back to Revelation chapter 12, verse 13 to 16. Revelation 12, verse 13, 16. Verse 13. And when the dragon saw that he was cast upon the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. And 2 wings of a great eagle were given to the woman, that she might fly to the wilderness, to her place to be fed there for a time, times, and a half a time from before the face of the serpent. And the serpent cast water as a river out of its mouth. And the woman, that the water might cause her to be carried away, and the earth helped the woman. And the earth opened up its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon cast out of its mouth. Okay, back to verse 6. Revelation 12, verse 6. And the woman fled to the wilderness, where she had a place that was prepared by Eloah, that they should nourish her for 1,260 days. Okay, fled to the wilderness. We'll talk about that a little bit. Where is this wilderness? Well, obviously it says it's a place of protection. So let's look at a few verses to see where it is not. Okay, to see where it is not. Many people say that this is in Jordan, around Petra, and that whole area. So let's go to the book of Obadiah, and we're going to start there. Remember, we're going to look, see where the places that it's not. Let's go to the book of Obadiah, chapter 1. Obadiah, we'll read the whole chapter. It's only 21 verses. Remember, we're looking at places where it's not going to be. There's 21 verses in the book of Obadiah. Verse 1, the vision of Obadiah. Thus said Adonai Yahweh concerning Edom. Where's Edom? Okay. We have heard a message from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the nations. Arise, you, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I make you small among the nations. You are greatly despised. The pride of your heart has beguiled you. Oh, that dwell in the clefts of the rock. Your habitation on high, that say in your heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though you make your nest as high as the eagle, and though you set it among the stars, I will bring you down from thence, says Yahweh. If thieves come to you, if robbers by night, how are you cut off? Will they not steal till they had enough? If grape gatherers come to you, would they not leave some gleaning grapes? How Esau searched out? How are his hidden places sought out? All the men of your confederacy have conducted you to the border. The men that were at peace with you have beguiled you and prevailed against you. They that eat your bread lay a snare under you, in whom there is no discernment. Shall I not in that day, says Yahweh, destroy the wise men out of Edom and discernment out of the mount of Esau? And your mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed, to the end that every one may be cut off from the mount of Esau by slaughter. That doesn't sound good. Okay, let's keep reading. For the violence done to your brother Yaakov shall cover you, and you shall be cut off forever. And the day that you did stand aloof, and the day that strangers carried away his substance, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even you were as one of them. But you should not have gazed on that day of your brother and the day of his disaster. Neither should you have rejoiced over the children of Yehuda in the day of their destruction. Neither should you have spoken proudly in the day of distress. You should not have entered into the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Yet you should not have gazed upon their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor have laid their hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. Neither should you have stood in the crossway to cut off those of his that escaped. Neither should you have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of distress. For the day of Yahweh is near upon all the nations. As you have done, it shall be done unto you. Your dealing shall return upon your own head. For as you have drunk upon my set apart mountain, so shall all the nations drink continually. Yes, they shall drink and swallow down, and shall be as though they had not been. But in Mount Zion, there shall be those that escape, and it shall be set apart. And the house of Yaakov shall possess their possessions. And the house of Yaakov shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble. And they shall kindle in him and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for Yahweh has spoken. And they of the south shall possess the mount of Esau, and they of the lowland, the Philistites, and they shall possess the field of Ephraim, and the field of Shomron. Benjamin shall possess Gilad. And the captivity of this host of the children of Israel that are among the Canaanites, even unto Zaphat, and the captivity of Jerusalem that is in Sepharad, shall possess the cities of the south. And saviors shall come upon Mount Zion to judge the mountain of Esau, and the kingdom shall be Yahweh's. Something very interesting. That place you don't want to be in. So let's continue on. We got some interesting things to look at. Malachi, book of Malachi, chapter 1, verses 1 to 3. Malachi chapter 1, verses 1 to 3. Malachi 1, verses 1 to 3. The burden of the word of Yahweh to Israel by Malachi. I have loved you, says Yahweh, yet you say, wherein have you loved us? Was not Esau your brother, says Yahweh? Yet I loved Yaakov, but Esau I hated, and made his mountains a desolation, and gave his heritage to the jackals of the wilderness. Ooh. You don't want to be in that part of the country. She'll come back. Romans chapter 9, verse 13. Romans 9:13. And it is written, Yaakov I have loved, and Esau I have hated. Okay. Go to Hebrews 12:14. Book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 14. And we'll start in verse 14, and we'll read to the end of the chapter, verse 29. Hebrews 12:14. Seek after shalom with all the sons of man and set apartness, for without it no man shall see Yahweh. Watch, lest there be one thing among you which is without the mercy of Elohim, lest there be among you a root that bears gall and wormwood, and springing up trouble, and many should be defiled. And there shall not be one among you who is a fornicator or profane, like Esau, who sold for only food his birthright. But you know that afterward, when he was to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no place for repentance, though he sought it in tears. For you are not come unto the mountain that cannot be touched and burned with fire, and also to the blackness and the darkness and the wind of the tempest, also not to the sound of the trumpets, not to the sound of words, which voice they that heard entreated that they should not speak the word to them. For they were not able to bear that which was which, if so much as the beast touch the mountain of it, shall be stoned or thrust through with a dart. And the sight was terrible, which Moses said, I greatly fear and tremble. But you're not come to Mount Zion, and to the place of the living Elohim, to the Yerushalayim of the heavens, and to a great multitude of angels, and to the assembly of the firstborn, which was written in heaven, and to Elohim, the judge of all the earth, until the spirits of the just are perfected, and to the mediation of the renewed covenant, Yehoshua, and to the blood, which speaks better things than Havel. See that you do not refuse him that speaks with you. For if there was none escape for them who refused him that spoke upon the earth, how much more if we turn away from him that speaks from heaven, whose voice at that time shook the earth. And behold, now he hath promised and said, once more, I will shake not only the earth, but also heaven. But in his saying that once more, signifying the removing of those things which he cannot be shaken, like those things which are built and raised up, which shall not be shaken. Therefore we receive a kingdom which shall not be moved, and let us have mercy whereby we may serve Elohim to our will and reverence and in fear. For Yahweh our Elohim is a consuming fire. Let's go to Daniel 11, verse 40. Daniel 11, verse 40. And this is really important. I'm going to point something out. I'll have you highlight it. Daniel chapter 11, verse 40 and 41. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come up against him like a whirlwind with chariots, with horsemen, with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow as he passes through. And he shall enter into a beauteous land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall be delivered out of his hand, Edom, Moab, and the chief children of Ammon. Okay, let's go back to verse 40. At the end of time, at the end of the age, this is what's going to happen. Verse 41, he shall enter into a beauteous land. That's Israel. Okay? Many countries will be overthrown, but the one country the false Messiah cannot touch, even though they border around Israel, as Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. Jordan, Petra. So bear with me a little bit. At the time of the end, that's really important. Okay, now let's go back to Jeremiah chapter 48, verse 1. We'll bring this to a conclusion. Jeremiah 48. Verse 1. Jeremiah 48:1. Of Moab. Thus says Yahweh the Elohim of Israel. Woe unto Nevo, for it is spoiled. Taim is put to shame, it is taken. Mizkab is put to shame and dismayed. Now go down to verse 16. Go down to verse 16. The calamity of Moab is near to come, and his affliction hastes fast. Let's go down to verse 20. Moab is put to shame, for it is dismayed. Wail and cry. Tell you it in Arnon that Moab is spoiled. Go to verse 35, verse 38. Moreover, I will cause to cease in Moab, says Yahweh, him that offers in the high place, and him that offers to his gods. Therefore my heart moans for Moab like pipes, and my heart moans like pipes for the men of carriers. Therefore the abundance that he has gotten is perished. For every head is bald, and every beard clipped. Upon the hands are cuttings, and upon the loins sackcloth. On all the housetops of Moab, and in the broad places thereof, there is lamentation. Everywhere, for I have broken Moab like a vessel, wherein is no pleasure, says Yahweh. Anyway, verse 36 and 37 talks about it's a funeral dirge. They're blowing the trumpets or the flutes or the pipes, and the people are shaving their head bald, clipping their beards, put cuttings on their bodies. That's all part of the funeral thing. So it's pretty devastating of what's going on there. Okay, back to Jeremiah. Let's keep reading. 39 down to the end of the chapter. How is it broken? Wail you. How has Moab turned back with shame? So shall Moab become a derision and a dismay to all that are round about him. For thus says Yahweh, behold, he shall swoop as a vulture, and shall spread out his wings against Moab. The cities are taken, the strongholds are seized, and the heart of the mighty men of Moab in that day shall be as the heart of a woman in her pangs. And Moab shall be destroyed for being a people, because he has magnified himself against Yahweh. Terror and the pit and the trap are upon you, O inhabitants of Moab, says Yahweh. He that flees from the terror shall fall into the pit, and he that gets up out of the pit shall be taken into the trap. For I will bring upon her, even upon Moab, the year of their visitation, says Yahweh. And the shadow of Heshbon, the fugitive, stands with strength. For a fire is gone forth out of Heshbon, and a flame from the midst of Sihon, and it devours the corner of Moab, and the crown of the head of the tumultuous ones. Woe unto you, O Moab! The people of Chemosh is undone. For your sons are taken away captive, and your daughters into captivity. Yet will I turn the captivity of Moab in the end of days, says Yahweh, thus far in the judgment of Moab. Okay, now, this is very interesting. Here we see that judgment of Moab and Jordan is very severe, and it's done by Yahweh. Yahweh did not want the false Messiah to execute judgment on these people. Yahweh is going to do it himself. Yeshua is going to do it himself. Anyone found being there as a believer ought not be there. Okay, let me continue. But what's interesting is Yahweh also promises a restoration of that kingdom at the end. Okay, that's important to understand. Okay, let's go to Jeremiah 49, verse 9 and 10. Jeremiah 49, verse 9 and 10. If grape gatherers came to you, would they not leave some gleaning grapes? If thieves by night, would they not destroy till they had enough? But I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brothers and his neighbors, and he is no more. So all the people of Moab are going to cease to exist. And you don't want to be joined to those people. You don't want to be there when Yeshua comes and does what he does, or what he will do. Huh?
Where?
Moab.
What is Moab today? What is it?
Okay, well, if you go back in the Torah study, went into Psalm 83, what those nations are. And you can see that Moab is up there along with uh, Jordan. Some are going to be mixed with Egypt and the whole thing. But you go back to the message, I went to Psalm 83 and gave a description exactly and where they're at, where they're placed on the globe positionally. See, we see that then Edom or Jordan or Ammon, they're completely destroyed. So let's see. Let's look at one more, I think. Okay, yeah. Jeremiah 49:13. This is a big one. Jeremiah 49, verse 13. Okay, verse 13. For I have sworn by myself, says Yahweh, and Bozrah shall become an astonishment, a reproach, a waste, and a curse, and all the cities thereof shall be perpetual wastes. Perpetual destroyed, gone, no more. No more.
Is this place over there by
Okay.
Moab?
Huh?
Is this place over there by Moab?
Yeah, this is Jordan.
Oh, okay.
This is specifically Jordan, and I'll describe that in just a moment. Okay, let's go to um, let's go to Isaiah 34, verse 6. I want to do something a little different here. Isaiah 34, verse 6. Isaiah chapter 34 and verse 6. We're just about ready to wrap it up here. Isaiah chapter 34, verse 6. And this is where Yahweh comes and destroys these people himself. That's what it's saying. He's saving this for himself so that the false Messiah won't do it. This is pretty sobering, brethren. Isaiah 34, verse 6. The sword of Yahweh is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For Yahweh has a sacrifice in Bozrah and a great slaughter in the land of Edom. Now let's fast forward it to Isaiah 63, verse 1 and 6. Isaiah 63, verse 1 and 6. Or 1 to 6, I should say. Isaiah 63, verses 1 through 6. Yeshayahu 63, Isaiah 63, verse 1. Who is this that comes from Edom with crimson garments from Bozrah? That is glorious in his apparel, state in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in victory, mighty to save. Wherefore is your apparel red, and your garments like his that treads in the wine vat? I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the peoples there was no man with me. Yes, I trod them in my anger, and I trampled them in my fury, and their lifeblood is dashed against my garments, and I have stained all my raiment. For the day of vengeance that was in my heart and my year of redemption are come. And I looked, and there was none to help, and I behold in astonishment, and there was none to uphold. Therefore my own arm brought Yeshua unto me, and my fury it upheld me. And I trod down the peoples in my anger, and I made them drunk with my fury, and I poured out their lifeblood on the earth. Just how serious is that?
Very serious.
False Messiah wouldn't have done that.
You're scared.
He'd have been much more kind. See what I'm saying? Okay, now let's go back to Jeremiah 49, verse 13 to 18. Jeremiah 49, 13 to 18. For I have sworn by myself, says Yahweh, that Bozrah shall become an astonishment, a reproach, a waste, and a curse, and all the cities thereof shall be a perpetual waste. I have heard a message from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the nations. Gather yourselves together and come against her and rise up to the battle. For behold, I make you small among the nations, despised among men. Your terribleness has deceived you, even the pride of your heart. O you that dwell in the cleft of the rocks. Okay, Petra, etc.
We don't want to go.
Cleft of the rock, and that whole the height of the hill, though you should make yourself make your nest as high as the eagle, I will bring you down from thence, says Yahweh. And Edom shall become an astonishment. Everyone that passes by it shall be astonished, and shall hiss at all the plagues thereof, as in the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the neighbor cities thereof, says Yahweh. No man shall abide there. Notice that. No man. Believe it or not, no man. No man shall abide there, and neither shall any son of man dwell therein. This is pretty bad stuff. So do you think the saints are going to go there for refuge in this wilderness? Let's go to, well, first off, let's discuss both. We're just about done. We got about 5 minutes. Bozrah was and is a city in Jordan. Today, Bozrah is a village of about 2,000 people as of the census in 2024. This Bozrah village is called Busrei Ashki Sham. We call it Bozrah, but it's called Busrei Ashki Sham, like Busra Askisham. Busrei Ashki Sham. It's called that today. Okay, now let's go back to Revelation 12:6 and conclude the teaching for today. Revelation 12:6. And the woman fled to the wilderness, where she had a place that was prepared by Eloah, and that they should nourish her for 1,260 days. I believe this is referring to Mount Sinai. There's nothing there. Remember, Israel was fed manna in the wilderness? They had nothing. I mean, they couldn't grow tomatoes, watermelons, or leeks, or any other that. There's no fish to be found. They were sustained simply by Yahweh, feeding them manna. And Mount Sinai is the place where the commandments were given, 10 Commandments, a place of refuge, a place of safety. So I believe myself, this is my own thought, it's referring to Mount Sinai where the 10 Commandments were given. It's a place of safety. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in this chapter as we progress.
I think I agree with
I
you.
mean, now,
I feel the same way.
tree is Mount Sinai in right now.
Saudi Arabia. Okay, let's pray. Abba, Father, we thank you that your word, you say it over and over again in different ways, different books, different passages of scripture. But when we learn how to study and trace it back, we know that truth is established by 2 or more witnesses. And in your scriptures, Father, you provide so many truths to point to one truth. And the conclusion is all your prophets were 100% accurate. Just as you, Father, know the end from the beginning, the beginning from the end. You are 100% truth, and you are 100% accurate. And therefore, you're not again you're not a man that should lie. So Father, help us to find these truths in your word. When we come to a problem that seems to contradict something else, or what people say, this is that and the other thing, to be able to prove to them or show them or come to them with the ready answer. And sometimes we don't know, but you do. And your word reveals what is truth and what is not. So again, Father, we just come before you with thanksgiving, praising you that you loved us before we ever loved you. And we, Father, continue to pray. I continue to pray for the protection for all the brethren, Father, and their families, no matter where they are, and for the healing that needs to be done among so many of our brothers and sisters in the Messiah. So, Father, we just give you all the praise, all the honor, and all the glory in Yeshua's mighty name. Amen and amen. And truly, Father, bless you all.
Hey Siri.